The twin suns of Tatooine hung low, casting a blood-orange glow over the endless dunes. The air shimmered with heat, and the distant hum of a swoop bike echoed faintly across the Jundland wastes. In the shadow of a jagged cliff, a hooded figure knelt beside a battered landspeeder, its engine coughing sparks into the sand. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jedi Master, adjusted the cloak, concealing his lightsaber, his blue-gray eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. The galaxy was no longer the place he had sworn to protect. The Clone Wars had ended, the Jedi Order had fallen, and the Republic was now an empire under the iron grip of Emperor Palpatine. Obi-Wan, once a beacon of hope, was a fugitive, hiding on this desolate world to watch over a boy who carried the weight of a prophecy he could scarcely comprehend. Obi-Wan's mission was simple, yet impossible. Protect young Luke Skywalker, the son of his fallen apprentice, Anakin. Every day was a test of patience, a quiet vigil in a world that felt like exile. But today, something had shifted. A distress signal had pierced the silence of his comm device, faint but unmistakable, originating from the outskirts of Mos Eisley. It was a Jedi frequency, one he hadn't heard since the Purge. His heart urged caution, but his duty as a Jedi demanded action. Against his better judgment, he had ventured out, only to find himself ambushed by a band of mercenaries hired by the Hutts. The fight had been swift, his lightsaber a blur of blue, but their numbers overwhelmed him. A stun blast had caught him off guard, and when he awoke, he was no longer free. Bound in durasteel cuffs, Obi-Wan sat in the dimly lit hold of a Hutt skiff, the stench of spice and oil thick in the air. The vessel rattled as it skimmed over the dunes toward Jabba's palace, its engines groaning under the weight of stolen cargo. His head throbbed, but his mind was sharp, wrestling with the implications of his capture. The Hutts were not known for mercy, and Jabba, the crime lord of Tatooine, had no love for Jedi. Obi-Wan's presence here was no accident. Someone had betrayed him, someone who knew he was still alive. His thoughts flickered to the Empire, to Darth Vader, Anakin, twisted by the dark side, and the possibility that this was a trap to draw him out. Yet, a deeper fear gnawed at him. If he fell, who would protect Luke? The boy was the galaxy's last hope, and Obi-Wan's failure would doom him to the same darkness that had claimed his father. As the skiff lurched to a stop, Obi-Wan's gaze fell on a figure slumped in the corner of the hold, her orange skin and white-blue montrals unmistakable even in the shadows. Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's former Padawan, was bound in chains, her face bruised but defiant. Her presence here was a shock, a reminder of the life Obi-Wan had left behind. Ahsoka had survived Order 66, carving out a life in the galaxy's underbelly, aiding those oppressed by the Empire. Their eyes met, and though no words passed between them, a flicker of understanding sparked. She, too, had been betrayed, lured to Tatooine by the same distress signal. The Hutts had cast a wide net, and both Jedi were now their prize. The skiff's hatch hissed open, revealing the towering silhouette of Jabba's palace against the fading suns. Gamorrean guards dragged Obi-Wan and Ahsoka into the cool, cavernous halls, where the air was thick with the scent of decadence. Jabba's throne room was a den of chaos. Courtiers laughed, musicians played, and the Hutt himself lounged on his dais, his bulbous eyes glinting with greed. Obi-Wan stood tall, his calm demeanor belying the storm within. He had faced Sith lords and armies, but the Hutts were a different kind of enemy, cunning, patient, and utterly devoid of honor. Jabba's guttural voice boomed through a translator droid, declaring that the Jedi would fetch a fortune from the Empire, but only after they served as entertainment in his arena. Obi-Wan's heart sank. This was no mere transaction. It was a spectacle designed to break them. As the guards shoved them toward the cells, Obi-Wan's mind raced. His capture was a deviation from the path he had chosen, a fracture in the quiet life he had built to safeguard Luke. The Jedi Code, once his guiding light, felt distant now, replaced by a raw determination to survive, not for himself, but for the boy. Ahsoka's presence complicated things. She was a warrior, fierce and resourceful, but her loyalty to the Jedi way had wavered since she left the Order. Could he trust her to fight alongside him, or would her own agenda lead them astray? The distress signal, the ambush, the Hutt's involvement, it all pointed to a larger scheme, one that threatened not just their lives, but the fragile hope they carried. In the cell, Obi-Wan sat cross-legged, centering himself in the Force. The walls were etched with the despair of countless prisoners, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the present. Ahsoka paced nearby, her energy restless, her voice low as she recounted her own journey. She had been tracking a network of Imperial informants, hoping to disrupt their operations, when the signal drew her to Tatooine. Her words carried a bitterness Obi-Wan recognized, a wound from the Order's fall, from Anakin's betrayal. Yet, beneath her anger, there was a spark of purpose, a desire to protect those the Empire had crushed. Obi-Wan saw in her a mirror of his own struggle, the tension between duty and survival, between hope and despair. The cell door clanged open, and a Twi'lek enforcer barked orders to prepare for the arena. Obi-Wan rose, his resolve hardening. The Hutts might hold his body, but they could not claim his spirit. He would fight, not for glory, but for Luke, for Ahsoka, for the galaxy that still whispered of freedom. Ahsoka met his gaze, her eyes fierce, and in that moment, they were Jedi once more, bound by a shared purpose. The arena awaited, a crucible of sand and blood, but Obi-Wan knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the shadows, a greater threat loomed, and he would face it with the clarity of a man who had nothing left to lose. The arena beneath Jabba's palace was a pit of despair, its sand-stained walls echoing with the roars of a bloodthirsty crowd. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano stood back to back, their cuffs removed but their weapons confiscated, as the gates rattled open. A rancor lumbered into the arena, its claws gouging the earth, its bellow shaking the air. Obi-Wan's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of his purpose. Every moment he survived was a moment closer to protecting Luke, to unraveling the trap that had ensnared them. Ahsoka's stance was coiled, her eyes darting for an escape, but Obi-Wan sensed her doubt, a fracture in her trust, not in him, but in the Jedi way that had failed them both. The rancor charged, and Obi-Wan dove to the side, using the Force to hurl a jagged rock at its face. The beast roared, momentarily stunned, as Ahsoka leapt onto its back, her fingers digging into its hide. The crowd jeered, but Obi-Wan focused, guiding Ahsoka through the Force with subtle nudges, their movements a dance of survival. Together, they brought the rancor down, its massive body collapsing in a cloud of dust. The victory was hollow. Jabba's laughter boomed from above, promising worse trials. As guards dragged them back to their cell, Obi-Wan's mind churned. The Hutts were toying with them, but why? The answer lay beyond Tatooine, and he suspected the Empire's hand in this game. In the cell, Ahsoka's frustration boiled over. She paced, her voice sharp as she questioned why Obi-Wan still clung to hope, to a boy who might never know his destiny. Her words cut deep, exposing Obi-Wan's own doubts. He had buried his grief for Anakin, for the Jedi, beneath a facade of duty, but Ahsoka's presence forced him to confront it. He admitted his fear, not of death, but of failing Luke, of becoming the man who let the galaxy fall. Ahsoka softened, revealing her own burden. She had been hunting Imperial informants to protect survivors of the Purge, but each mission felt like a betrayal of the Jedi she once was. Their shared pain forged a fragile bond, but Obi-Wan sensed a shadow in her resolve, a temptation to forge her own path. Their reprieve was short-lived. Jabba's enforcers arrived, binding them for transport off-world. The Hutts had struck a deal with an Imperial contact, and the Jedi were to be delivered to Nar Shaddaa, the smuggler's moon, where a mysterious buyer awaited. The journey was a blur of hyperspace, the cramped hold of a Hutt freighter stifling. Obi-Wan meditated, seeking clarity in the Force, but it was clouded, as if the dark side itself watched them. Ahsoka, restless, pried at the ship's panels, her ingenuity sparking a plan. When the freighter landed in Nar Shaddaa's neon-lit undercity, she triggered a short circuit, plunging the hold into darkness. In the chaos, they broke free, overpowering their guards with precise strikes, their Jedi training unbroken despite their chains. Nar Shaddaa was a labyrinth of vice, its towering spires pulsing with light and danger. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka slipped into the crowds, their cloaks concealing their identities. The city's chaos was both a shield and a threat, with bounty hunters and Imperial patrols lurking in every shadow. Obi-Wan's instincts screamed that their escape was too easy, a suspicion confirmed when blaster fire erupted behind them. A cadre of Trandoshan mercenaries, hired by the Hutts, pursued them through the markets, their vibroblades gleaming. Obi-Wan deflected bolts with a stolen blaster, his lightsaber still in Jabba's possession, while Ahsoka used the Force to collapse a stall, slowing their pursuers. They ducked into an abandoned refinery, its rusted machinery offering temporary cover. In the refinery's gloom, Obi-Wan grappled with his emotions. Each step felt like a betrayal of his vow to stay hidden, to protect Luke from afar. Yet the Force had led him here, to Ahsoka, to this moment. Was it guiding him toward redemption or ruin? Ahsoka, meanwhile, uncovered a clue. A data card dropped by one of the mercenaries, containing coordinates for a meeting on Coruscant. The Imperial contact was no ordinary officer. It was someone high in the Empire's ranks, possibly Vader himself. Ahsoka's eyes burned with purpose. She saw a chance to strike at the Empire, to reclaim her agency. Obi-Wan cautioned restraint, but her resolve was unshakable, and he realized she might act alone if he refused to follow. They stole a battered speeder, racing through Nar Shaddaa's skylanes to a smuggler's hangar where Ahsoka had contacts. There, they secured a ship, a rickety YT-1300 freighter, and blasted off for Coruscant. The journey was tense, the ship's engines straining as Obi-Wan wrestled with his role. He was no longer the general of the Clone Wars, nor the hermit of Tatooine, but a man caught between past and future. Ahsoka, piloting the ship, shared her plan. Infiltrate the Imperial Palace, uncover the contact, and disrupt the Empire's plans. Her words carried a reckless edge, and Obi-Wan feared she was chasing vengeance, not justice. Yet, he could not abandon her, nor the truth they might uncover. Coruscant's skyline glittered like a blade, its towers a testament to the Empire's dominance. The Jedi landed in the lower levels, where the air was thick with smog and despair. Disguised as scavengers, they navigated the underworld, following the data card's coordinates to an abandoned Senate annex. Inside, they found a hollow terminal active with encrypted transmissions. Ahsoka hacked the system, revealing a shocking truth. The Imperial contact was not Vader, but Grand Moff Tarkin, orchestrating a deal with the Hutts to eliminate Jedi survivors and secure Tatooine's spice trade for the Empire. The distress signal had been Tarkin's bait, designed to lure Obi-Wan and Ahsoka into a trap. Before they could process this, alarms blared. Stormtroopers stormed the annex, their blasters lighting up the darkness. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka fought back, their movements fluid despite their lack of lightsabers. Obi-Wan used the Force to hurl debris, while Ahsoka disarmed troopers with precise strikes. They escaped through a ventilation shaft, emerging in the Undercity's maze. But the encounter left Obi-Wan shaken. Tarkin's involvement meant the Empire was closer to Tatooine than he feared, threatening Luke's safety. Ahsoka, meanwhile, burned with determination to expose Tarkin, her secondary mission now a crusade. The tension between them grew, Obi-Wan's duty to Luke clashed with Ahsoka's need to fight the Empire head-on. As they hid in a derelict warehouse, Obi-Wan confronted his fear of failure. The galaxy had taken so much. Anakin, the Jedi, his hope. And now it demanded more. Ahsoka's presence reminded him of what he could still save, but her path risked pulling them both into a war they could not win. The Force hummed with warning, urging him to act, but the path forward was unclear. Ahsoka, sensing his turmoil, offered a rare moment of vulnerability, admitting she fought not just for justice, but to honor Anakin's memory, to prove he was not wholly lost. Their shared grief bound them, but the shadow of Tarkin's trap loomed larger, promising a reckoning neither could avoid. The warehouse on Coruscant's lower levels offered only fleeting sanctuary. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano crouched amid rusted crates, their breaths shallow as Imperial patrols scoured the Undercity. The revelation of Grand Moff Tarkin's plot burned in Obi-Wan's mind. The Hutt's trap was a cog in a larger Imperial machine, designed to crush Jedi survivors and tighten the Empire's grip on Tatooine's spice trade. Luke's safety was at risk, and Obi-Wan's heart ached with the fear of failing him. Ahsoka, her eyes alight with defiance, urged a bold strike against Tarkin, but Obi-Wan sensed a deeper truth. The Force pulsed with urgency, guiding them back to Tatooine, where the Hutts still held their lightsabers, and the key to unraveling Tarkin's scheme. They stole a sleek Imperial shuttle from a nearby docking bay, its engines roaring as they blasted off Coruscant. The journey to Tatooine was fraught with tension, Ahsoka's resolve clashing with Obi-Wan's caution. She saw Tarkin's exposure as a chance to ignite rebellion, but Obi-Wan feared the cost. Exposure could draw Vader's attention, endangering Luke. Yet, he could not deny the Force's pull, nor Ahsoka's passion. As they entered Tatooine's orbit, a Hutt freighter intercepted them, its turbo-lasers blazing. The space battle erupted above the desert world, a chaotic dance of fire and metal. Obi-Wan piloted the shuttle, weaving through volleys of laser fire, while Ahsoka manned the guns, her shots precise despite the ship's unfamiliar controls. The freighter's hull buckled under their assault, but not before it transmitted their position to Jabba's palace. The shuttle crash-landed in the Dune Sea, its hull scorched but intact. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka emerged, sand whipping against their cloaks as they trekked toward Jabba's palace. The twin suns blazed overhead, mirroring the fire in Obi-Wan's heart. He grappled with his role, not just as Luke's guardian, but as a Jedi in a galaxy that no longer believed in them. Ahsoka's crusade to honor Anakin's memory pushed her toward recklessness, and Obi-Wan feared she might lose herself to vengeance. The palace loomed ahead, its domed towers a fortress of greed. They infiltrated through a maintenance tunnel, their movements silent, guided by the Force. Inside, they found their lightsabers in a guarded vault, reclaiming them with swift, silent strikes against Gamorrean sentries. The throne room was a cauldron of chaos, Jabba's court oblivious to the storm approaching. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka burst in, lightsabers igniting with a sharp hiss, blue and white-green blades cutting through the dim light. Bounty hunters and guards surged forward, blasters blazing, but the Jedi moved as one, their strikes a symphony of precision. Obi-Wan deflected bolts, his movements fluid despite years of exile, while Ahsoka leapt among the rafters, dismantling turrets with acrobatic grace. Jabba roared, slamming his tail against the dais, but the tide turned when Obi-Wan used the Force to collapse a chandelier, scattering the crowd. In the chaos, a hollow transmission flickered to life, revealing Tarkin's face. He berated Jabba for failing to deliver the Jedi, but his words faltered as he saw Obi-Wan. The transmission cut off, and Obi-Wan's blood ran cold. Tarkin was coming, and with him, the Empire. The unexpected twist came as the palace shook, not from an Imperial assault, but from an internal betrayal. Boba Fett, Jabba's prized bounty hunter, turned on his employer, his jetpack flaring as he fired at the Hutt's guards. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka seized the moment, fighting alongside Fett in a whirlwind of blaster fire and lightsaber strikes. Fett's motives were unclear: greed, revenge, or something deeper, but his aid tipped the scales. Jabba's forces fell, and the Hutt himself slithered toward an escape hatch, only to be pinned by Ahsoka's force grip. Obi-Wan confronted Jabba, demanding answers. The Hutt, trembling, revealed that Tarkin had orchestrated the distress signal, using a captured Jedi artifact to mimic the signal. The artifact was now en route to Corellia, where Tarkin planned to auction it to the Empire's elite, cementing his power. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, with Fett's reluctant aid, commandeered Jabba's yacht, racing to Corellia. The industrial world's shipyards glittered in the void, a hive of Imperial activity. The auction was aboard a Star Destroyer orbiting Corellia, its hangar bay a fortress of stormtroopers and TIE fighters. Obi-Wan piloted the yacht, evading patrols, while Ahsoka and Fett prepared to infiltrate. The space battle erupted as rebel fighters, summoned by Ahsoka's underworld contacts, attacked the Star Destroyer, creating a diversion. Obi-Wan's heart surged with hope. Ahsoka's network was the spark of resistance he had long thought extinguished. They boarded the destroyer, lightsabers blazing, cutting through troopers in a desperate race to the auction chamber. Tarkin stood at the chamber's center, the Jedi artifact, a kyber crystal pulsing with light, held aloft. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka fought their way in, but Tarkin unleashed a trap, a squad of Inquisitors, dark side warriors wielding red blades. The duel was ferocious, Obi-Wan's blue saber clashing with an Inquisitor's spinning blade, while Ahsoka battled two at once, her white blades a blur. Fett, ever the opportunist, fired from the shadows, thinning the Inquisitor's ranks. Obi-Wan reached Tarkin, disarming him, but the Grand Moff activated a self-destruct sequence, intent on taking the Jedi with him. In a heart-wrenching moment, Ahsoka chose to stay behind, holding off the remaining Inquisitors to buy Obi-Wan time to escape with the crystal. Her eyes met his, a silent farewell, and Obi-Wan fled, the weight of her sacrifice crushing his soul. The Star Destroyer exploded in a fireball, lighting up Corellia's orbit. Obi-Wan, aboard the yacht with Fett, clutched the kyber crystal, its light a beacon of loss and hope. Ahsoka's sacrifice was a wound he would carry forever, but it had saved the artifact, preserving a piece of the Jedi's legacy. Back on Tatooine, Obi-Wan hid the crystal in a cave near the Lars homestead, ensuring Luke's safety remained his priority. The galaxy, however, was stirring. Ahsoka's rebel contacts, inspired by her sacrifice, spread word of Tarkin's treachery, weakening the Empire's grip. On Alderaan, Bail Organa, a familiar face from the Republic's twilight, received Obi-Wan's encrypted message about the crystal. Bail vowed to protect it, forging a secret alliance to nurture the rebellion, a spark of hope born from Ahsoka's loss. Obi-Wan returned to his vigil on Tatooine, his heart heavy with Ahsoka's absence, but lifted by the galaxy's awakening. The Empire was vast, but cracks were forming, and he knew Luke would one day rise to meet them. The Jedi were not gone. They lived in the courage of those who fought, in the sacrifices of those who fell. As he watched the sun set, Obi-Wan felt the Force, clear and strong, whispering of a future where balance might return. The galaxy was not yet lost, and he would guard its hope until his last breath. And folks, that's our story for today. This one hit me hard. Writing Ahsoka's sacrifice was tough, but it felt right for her arc, honoring Anakin's memory while igniting the rebellion. I loved weaving Boba Fett's twist into the mix. His unpredictability added a layer of Star Wars grit. The blend of tragedy and hope mirrors what I love about this universe. Loss shapes us, but it also lights the way forward. I drew inspiration from Rogue One for that bittersweet vibe, and I hope it resonated with you. Let me know what you thought in the comments, what worked, what didn't, and what Star Wars what if you'd like to see next. Thanks for reading, and I'll see you in the next one.